Do that here. Hello, everybody over on Twitch now. Welcome in. It's going to be a little bit of a different format tonight. I was just explaining. Tonight, we're going to be talking about how the Caps unfortunately lost to the Boston Bruins in 4 straight games. We last left off, it was 1-1. It obviously went south pretty quickly. So we'll talk about that. But we'll also talk about some of the good things for the Washington, D.C. sports as well. We'll talk about the Wizards, how they had this incredible run to the playoffs, and how they actually took a number 1 seed and made it a very close game in game 1 of their series. And so we'll preview that entire series, which, a couple months ago, they had a 0.2% chance of even making the playoffs. And if someone had told me the Wizards would be playing past the Capitals in the postseason, I would think that would be nearly impossible. I wouldn't have believed you. So I know that doesn't give much solace to Caps fans. I totally understand that. But this podcast will have both the highs and the lows in it. We'll also talk about the Nats week, which also had a lot of highs and lows. It started off really badly where they lost 3 out of their first 4, but then I'm sorry to Tim Clark, but we took advantage of the Orioles and we won 3 straight. So we went from 1-3 on the week to 4-3 on the week for the Nationals. So again, low start, and a trajectory is going in the right direction. Anna, why don't we start off? I know we usually give a little update on what you talk about on the other podcasts to end the show, but why don't you start at the beginning with what you talked about, Gil? I know it was before the end, before the last episode. I really enjoyed it. I did listen to it, and I wanted to get just give people a sense on that podcast if they want to go back and listen to it, what they would gain while I share this one out to different people, and then we'll get into the week that was, and then obviously our thoughts on the future for the Capitals, and to go around the league and talk about the rest of the NHL as well.
That sounds great. So on the Power Play podcast, Gil and I discussed yesterday sort of our personal feelings, and I will say that it's not in a completely PG show. Thoughts and feelings on how the Capitals played, where our frustrations were, and what we hope to see for the team. There was a lot of discussion on the goalies. Do we praise Sammy? Do we praise, Anderson? What do we do with Vanacek now that he's injured? Do we, is he going to come back and be our number 1? So there was a lot of issues with that. But I do think that there was a lot of concern with just the fact that the team overall looked like they just didn't have it in them to win. There just wasn't that Stanley Cup drive that all of us wanted to see. And that's just heartbreaking for the fans. I think we were hoping they would rally and say, oh yeah, we're going to get this, and we're going to come back in Capital One and take out Boston. And it just didn't happen. We just didn't play the 60 minutes of hockey. So I know it's not the happy-go-lucky podcast, and certainly this one either, but there was a lot of frustrations on the fact that the team just didn't seem to show up. The lines were shifted a lot there. I still don't understand why, and no offense to Daniel Carr, but I don't think he was quite ready for playoffs over Sprong. That was one issue. I still don't think that Ovechkin was 100%. Carlson wasn't 100%. Backstrom wasn't 100%. And then all of a sudden we bring Kuzi back after, his time off. And I think there was a lot of frustration, a lot of disappointment, just from a fan's point of view. So we definitely vocalized that yesterday. But, we spoke from the heart. And, we're always going to watch this team and love this team and support this team. But, you have to, at some point, step back and say, okay, what the hell? Like, why did we, Daniel Carr, why this over this? And I really honestly didn't think Sammy was the right person to put in during that first game of him being back. But then I hear Craig Aronson could have been injured. So I'm like, I'm kind of flipping back and forth, but I do get frustrated when I hear that there were veterans that were injured that didn't allow other players to come up who were healthy, who, maybe have rested legs and are, come on, give them a chance. And they're going to be almost selfish and play with an injury and not do as well. So like, I'm kind of torn on that because, you respect the hell out of the veteran players and you want to see them, get the cup again. But at what point, it's like, come on, like you're injured, you're not playing 100%. So why not give it to somebody who could? So that was my frustration with that. So that was mainly what we talked about yesterday, and had Josh Kirby come on, which was fantastic.
I thought he did a great job. I always loved Josh Kirby, and
Me
he's been a
too.
fan of this show, and I've been a fan of his podcast
God.
for a long time. And so I thought that he gave a very interesting, different perspective. And I always love your banter with Gil and all that stuff. In fact, I was just talking to Gil. Gil's going to actually join us for a few minutes at the end of this segment, and we'll get his take on that. But why don't we, while we wait for Gil, and Gil will come in about 15 or 20 minutes into the podcast from now, and we're going to start off by talking about the games. Unfortunately, we're going to quickly break them down, how we thought one game may have influenced the next, and just try to walk through it in about 20 minutes, not spend a lot of time on it, but maybe 15 minutes. We'll see how it goes. But let's why don't you break down the first scoring of the first game, and then we can go from there.
Sure. Well, I have the Wednesday game. Is that okay if I went into
the Wednesday? Yeah. So that's the game that's after our game. Yeah. So we talked about the Monday game on last Tuesday. So yeah, Wednesday game is perfect.
Okay, perfect. So no goals in the first. In the second period has Ovi scoring his first with the power play goal, assisted by Mantha at 8:21, which is awesome for us. Hall scores for Boston less than a minute later, and then Nick Dowd scores his second at 18:15 with the tip in, assisted by Hathaway. Marchand ties it up in the third at 11:32 with a power play heading into overtime, and then we go into the second overtime, and at 5:48 Smith scores, and that was just one of those painful. You want to chalk it up to miscommunication. You want to chalk it up to whatever. It was an absolute terrible, terrible play. Like, oh my God, like, I don't even know what to call it. It was, you say it's a miscommunication between the goalie and, who was it? I don't even know now. I wrote it down somewhere. But it was terrible. It was awful. And it was painful. And I think that was when we truly saw the wrath of Ovechkin.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal to watch. And it totally deflated the team, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that there was a ripple effect that may have gone throughout the rest of the series. I think if you win a game like that, you could gain a lot from it. And I think you could see how upset they were. And it's so tough to know whether it's us giving effort or it's Boston taking it away. Boston is a great defensive team.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of Caps fans who are like, we're not doing anything. It's like, no, Boston's taking stuff actively away from us.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that it's easy to forget that. And it's easy to be like, oh, the Caps need to do so much better. I honestly feel better about this series loss than I do about many in the past, because I honestly feel like the better team won. And that's a struggle, right? Because it's not necessarily, it's like, oh, that's, you should never say die, and you should always believe in your team. But there are times, and I think you alluded to it in our open about injuries, and I think there were a lot of injuries. I don't think they've all come out yet, and I
agree.
think we saw it with these players playing through the injuries early on. The last couple of weeks leading up to this, and I had a bad feeling going into this playoffs. I honestly thought we'd probably lose this series. We didn't actually give predictions, if I remember correctly, going into
We did not. And this, I will say, this is honestly the first time that I have ever spoken highly about an opponent's, like certain players on the opponent's team. And I said last week when we spoke about it, Charlie Coyle, McAvoy, like Hall, these are kids. I mean, they're, not kids, but they're not vets they're not the Marchand and Bergeron, of the Boston. But it's like, what an amazing balance of vets versus, younger players and how they stepped up. And those were just, to me, players to watch out for. And they have not disappointed. And then Gil and I talked about, and again, like, I hate to bring up another team, but you kind of have to give credit where credit's due, even if it is Boston. And it's like, you have a Tuukka Rask who, all right, well, he's kicking ass. And aside from all that COVID drama where people were like, he's a this and that, and, what a jerk for leaving his team. Well, that's where you just, that was a family issue, and this is a hockey thing. You kind of have to divide the two, but they have Tuca and they have Swayman, and we just don't have that power play goalie situation, unfortunately. Maybe we do, and they haven't been given the chance yet, but Boston just outplayed us.
And Carly is in our Twitch chat, and Carly's a big Boston fan. I'm her moderator. She's my moderator. So we have a love-hate relationship with sports. We all agree on music, but she's saying some good points. He wanted to be with his kids, and I totally respect that. And
100%.
I was so mad at any Boston fan that was against him last year.
Me too.
And I kind of feel like some of those fans shouldn't even get to deserve to root for him this year when he plays so well.
Exactly.
I'm like, you totally threw him under the bus, and that frustrated me to no end. And I know that Carly's a Boston fan that would have never done that. I know many other Boston fans don't do that, and that's good, but that really ticked me off last year.
To me, that just was a huge, like, you drew the line right there, because you are not looking at these players as anything, to be respected. It's like, come on, he has a family, and that's what you have to respect, and that's what you have to consider. And if he chose his family over, playing in the COVID bubble, good on him. And it's Tuukka Rask, and we knew,
in a very dangerous year. I have no judgment whatsoever for that. I also want to say shout out to everybody. There's Nick, who's a big Caps fan in our Twitch feed. Also, our True No Spots Pod. Of course, Ken is helping out over there as well. I want to give a big shout out to Facebook as well. I got a lot of people joining in and commenting on there as well. One of the questions is, when will you start talking about possible roster for next year? And we're going to talk about that tonight. Who, at least the part of who we're going to protect, which is the first question that we have to answer, right? William says, I can't disagree with what I was saying before. And he said that you had some fair points, Anna. And sometimes the other team is just better. Rask stood on his head. And William says, I don't feel like we played to our full potential. And both of those things can be true. I think we could have played better. I think there was a lot of injuries that we don't know about. I feel like if we were 100% going into it, we would have seen a different team. It's hard for me to believe someone like a Nicholas Backstrom, who, puts together some of the most assists in elimination games, the most in Capitals history.
One.
And Ovechkin, who scores goals after goals after goals. And, we had some secondary scoring, but the reality is, a lot of the thing that worked for us in that last game, and we'll get to it, is the rebound, right? And there just wasn't enough second shots and tip-ins and things like that. And so Rask could take advantage of that. And I think Rask is a very good goalie, and I think that the Caps have beaten up on him a lot over the years, and so this is his opportunity for revenge, right? So you give a guy an opportunity and see what he can do with it. And the other team played phenomenal in front of him. Very little zone time. And so we're starting with talking about this game 3, and in overtime, very little zone time. We didn't put enough pressure on them, and then they come back and they win the game on a gaff. But to be honest, it should have never gotten that far into the game. We should have had to win it in the first overtime. I think the fact that, Boston outplayed us for that entire first overtime, I was surprised it wasn't over by that point already, So but anyway, let's move into game 2. We'll try to work our way through these games. Or not game 2, I'm sorry, the second game of the 3.
So it is interesting that we kind of have this pattern of no goals in the first, in which you think, like, okay, like, our team is on fire, but not so much apparently. Second goal, second period, the only goal by Boston 8 minutes in with the power play. Third period, Boston scores 29 seconds in with a power play, and Coyle scores about 30 plus seconds later to make it 3-0 Boston. The captain scores the second with a power play assisted by Carlson and Backstrom. Yay. But Boston scored again at 14:50 with the power play goal to win and a 4-1. And it was just one of those things where when you start to look at the shots on goal and the power play, you just kind of want to shake your head and say, WTF, like on this one. I mean,
So I hated the fact that we basically ran the same power play the entire series
yep,
and it wasn't working. And William just asked a really great question. Can we speculate why we didn't use Chara's slap shot? And I'll go one step further. Why didn't we see like huge shifts and changes of personnel? And I hate the slingshot. We've got to find another way. I understand they're stacking the line, but there's got to be some other way. Why do no other teams seem to use the slingshot as much as us? And yet we keep on going back to it. I just think that our power play coach needs to be fired. I mean, it was awful. I mean, we had so many
yeah,
opportunities in the series, and I get that Boston's one of the best penalty killing teams. But if you have 7 power plays in a game, for
right.
example, you have to take advantage of at least 3 of those, right?
I mean, there's no
Minimum 2. The
excuse.
fact that the one was on a kind of a deflection on a play that it shouldn't have even really, it wasn't really our causing of it. We're lucky
Right.
it went in. I'm like, so in some ways, we were kind of 0 for 7 and got lucky. And that just can't happen. But like, why couldn't you have Chara with his booming slap shot? Amantha switching up his position, just
Something.
switching up everybody's position, because obviously they kept on entering the zone from the area nearest to the bench, right? And they kept on doing this slingshot pass. Like I could predict it every time. Like there was
Exactly.
no variation on it. Like it
Well,
was
and
so yeah,
for
frustrating.
like, honestly, when Gil and I talked about it last or 2 nights ago, the biggest frustration was if we as fans can predict it, you sure as hell know the
The other team
players
can't.
and the
Yeah.
opponent can. And that's what I'm like, come on, like, let's surprise Tuukka Rask with somebody else other than Ovechkin. Like, there are a ton of players. Like, how awesome would it have been to see Chara, just give that bullet and just be like, yes, or a Mantha or something, like someone that you're not totally expecting, but it's like we are so predictable. And I think that there was moments even from game one that it was like Ovi was just trying too hard and getting frustrated. And it was like, okay, sometimes you just gotta, take a step back. You're not 100%. It's obvious you're not 100%, and give somebody else the opportunity, or somebody, like, yeah, mix it up a
We
little
had so many young players, Black Aces. I'm not saying
bit.
that any one of them should have gotten a spot over people that had played on the team and played well. I think Sprong had to get into this series way earlier. I know they got him in for game 5, but why that long? I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I just, I'm frustrated with a lot of things.
Hmm.
But I think Boston was still the better team. Like, I think we could have fixed a lot of those things. And that top line from Boston is so dangerous. And you
Ugh.
see it in the last game, how dangerous they are. It's difficult. Um, and Josh had put Sprong, Mantha, and Orloff on a power play unit. I agree. I mean, I know that they actually were. I think some of those players may have even been on power play 2, but you never even saw power play unit 2. I feel like
Yeah.
they just put on the same top unit all the time. So like they like rotated the second unit in practices, so I'd see a whole new list of players each time, but they would
Right.
get on average 10 to 15 seconds of ice time per power play, and like ultimately that's not going to be enough.
And
And
it definitely wasn't a call or a situation that you want to see during the playoffs. If you want to mix it up or do something, preseason or in the very beginning, fine. But with this, it's like, if it's not working, if it's predictable, which it is, come on, like, let's see somebody, let's just see, mix it up a little bit. I feel like Laviolette seems like the kind of coach that does want to mix up the lines. If you're not proving yourself, I'm going to swap you out with somebody else. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then all of a sudden we get into the playoffs and everyone's kind of looking at the lines like, what the hell, Daniel Carr? Like, what did we miss here with Daniel Sprong, who was kicking ass? So that was very frustrating.
yeah, It'll be interesting to see how these lines change going forward. I mean, Hershey had one of the best teams in the AHL this year. A lot of great
Yeah.
players, a lot of great opportunities to move some players up. We got to get younger. My dad sent me an article about how the age, even though we're the oldest team, that the numbers don't quite add up because it's really that we have a bunch of really old players, and so it very much skews the numbers. I liked Char this year. I don't know what to necessarily do about him though, because Boston won without him, and he's too slow for today. I love his veteran leadership, and I love
Yeah.
so much about him, but I just don't know if he's fast enough to compete in today's NHL. I think you got to go faster on
Yeah.
D to try to compete with some of these lines, and it's disappointing because I would love for there to be a place on the roster for him.
Right. I agree, but
But
I think that, his true heart is in Boston, not with the Bruins, but with his family. And he's what, 44. It's like, there are times that you have to just think like, okay, listen, you had a great year. You came in, you won the hearts of DC fans and the respect. But I feel like the beginning of the games, like yeah, we were like, and then it just sort of teetered a little bit. We didn't hear so much of the Chara hype. So
yeah, for sure. All right, let's well, I'm trying to figure out if we should talk more about each game, or I mean, I think it's good. We're getting through them, but I just this was the game that they had to show up and they didn't, right? I
they
mean, it was
didn't.
like, and that was really depressing because I felt like it was going to lead into the next one, and it was their worst game,
Yep.
and they had gone into it saying they were going to put the best effort on. I'm happy Ovechkin scored, so it wasn't a shutout, but it very well could have been. I mean. They just outplayed us for most of the game. I mean, it was a pretty low scoring. It was only 1-0 after the second, but in the third, they score twice in 30 seconds and break the whole thing
Yeah.
wide open. And I don't think the goaltending was the problem. I'm not sure it's the solution. I don't know what we do going forward. Double V was phenomenal all year. I'd like to see another year of his development, and I'd
Yeah.
like to see another year of Sam's development too, because the reality is Holtby wasn't Holtby in his first playoffs either, right?
Of
So
course.
you got to go through these things. The fact that his very first game is a double overtime that is for Sam ever in the playoffs is rough, and it's against a
Yeah.
really good defensive Boston team. So,
Absolutely.
and in most years, us playing Boston would be like an Eastern Conference Finals or something. It wouldn't be
Right.
like first round matchup. So I think that we played in a very brutal division, and people always ask me, "Who are you going to root for now?" Right? I'm actually going to root for Boston, right? Because I'd like to see them win it all, and then I could say we lost to the best team. That's
Yeah.
my opinion. I know some people are like, "No, screw them. They beat us. They're dead." You gotta. I see from Caps
Of
fans, and
course.
I get that. I understand that logic. I don't have the same sort of level of hatred I do for, like, say, a Pittsburgh.
Well, that's just
Pittsburgh.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if Pittsburgh beats us, even if Philadelphia beats us, maybe even if the Rangers beat us. But it's like Boston was only in our division this one year, and next
Yeah.
year it's probably going to go back to the Metro again. So we probably aren't going to be in the division with them again. So
Right.
it's just this like fluky thing, and because I have a friend Carly in chat, I will respect her, and I will not actively root against Boston. I know that some Caps fans that'll probably rub the wrong way that I even said that and be like traitor. But it's
No,
not that
but
I would root for them over the Capitals, but the Capitals season is done, and that's the
yeah,
reality. And so the question is, are you going to continue to watch hockey or not, right? And so
exactly.
right now, Tampa Bay, Florida is 1-1, 5:38 left in the second period in a very close game where if Tampa Bay goes into Florida and wins, that series is over. Toronto is up just 2-1 over Montreal in a very close game. That's only got 4 minutes and 15 seconds left in the third. And I believe that the other game went to overtime, right? I think that the other game is still going on, and that's why they switched games. I'm going to pull it up just to make sure.
Yeah.
But I believe that the Islanders
It was 2-2.
versus it was 2-2, and I'm looking at it right now, and it is still 2-2 end of third.
But there was a
So
nasty, nasty injury when we were first talking that I didn't want to get into because I didn't hold my glasses on, so I couldn't see who the player was. An Islanders player that it almost looked like he broke his leg. Um, I'm
ooh,
certainly hoping that wasn't the case, but when you see it in slow motion and kind of makes you want to puke in your mouth a little bit. He fell and then up against the boards, and his leg was, so there was definitely not a pleasant injury on an Islanders end. And the way he went off, he didn't have a stretcher, so maybe it wasn't broken, but still, it just looked awful.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's get into this last game. I was hoping we'd force it to six, but I really didn't feel like we were going to win in Boston in six, even if we like won this game. But it would have been nice to continue and not have us have our season-ending podcast tonight.
Right.
It does. I will say it will make a programming change. Now next week we're going to take Memorial Day off because we won't have Caps to talk about. We would have Wizards, but the Wizards actually play during it. So I'm going to give the Wizards Roundtable the night to be able to watch the game, and we'll come back and we'll recap.
Okay.
I don't think we're going to beat Philly, so I don't think there's any secret here. I would love us to, but I don't think the Wizards are going to beat a number one seed. It's happened so rarely in NBA history. It has happened. Don't want to say it has not, but it's pretty rare. But we'll get into the Wizards talk in just a little bit, but I'm very proud of that team. But we'll talk about that the week after Memorial Day. So we're going to take Memorial Day weekend off, and so that's why we're kind of recapping this season in addition to going through it. And we'll probably still have Anna on to talk off-season stuff, continue to do it. I know that Carol will want to give his take. I know that he'll probably do a little special or a Facebook Live. Shout out to Carol. He's making big sales tonight. So good on you, Carol. That is the
Yes.
right decision. We can take over the podcast for a night. You make those sales. And if you want to get a new Honda, definitely check out Carol. So let's break down the last game, and then Gil's going to join us in just a few moments. But another disappointing game and a disappointing effort by the Capitals. But again, I think the Caps I didn't think played terrible in this game. I just think that the Bruins played better. But we'll break down the scoring and then we can get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So no goals in the first. There we go with that trend. And then you have second period. You have Pasternak and Bergeron scoring, which are two power play players. It's like you don't want to hear that. But then our shining moment, third period, 11 seconds in, Connor Sheary, fantastic. And I really did feel like, okay, when this is assisted by Oshin Orlov, and this brought the team together, and we finally started to see a little spark from the fans, because that was definitely like crickets in the Kappa One Center. I really thought like we could have pulled it off. And then Bergeron closes it out at 12:25 for a 3-1 loss, and just wasn't in the cards for us. And again, I think it was, we were outplayed. And we just, at this point, for as much as, Carol and I hate Brad Marchand and truly do, I'm not taking that away. That is always going to be there. They were just the better team. And we just have some things to work on. And I do think it is time to, as much as you want to say, fight through the pain and this is the playoffs and play with your injury, at some point you kind of need to say, hey, I'm injured. And Gil and I spoke about that last night, and it's like, yeah, you need to speak up and kind of let your ego aside and say, I might not be 100%. So maybe a certain someone from Hershey who's Black Ace and is kind of kicking ass might do a better job, but who knows?
I don't know. It's
It
always the
sucked.
last game was always a tough pill. I have to say though, winning in 2018 has made me have a totally different outlook on this team, right? So I know some Caps fans are just so angry
Yeah.
afterwards, and I used to get that way and just so devastated. Um, Having a son is helpful. Him smiling and cuddling with me and stuff like that, which I did not have before the 2018.
Right.
So that helps. But also just knowing that Ovi and Nick have always won that one, right? And
Yep.
they will never be cupless and all the jokes and all that thing. And I used to just after a loss just be devastated, thinking, I hope we're not wasting the prime of these players. And they could have gone somewhere else and probably won a cup. And so the fact that we always have that and the one's right behind you on the video wall, and they can never take that away,
Exactly.
makes me feel a lot better. And it also proves how hard it is to win the Stanley Cup. I'm actually wearing my
Yeah.
Stanley Cup shirt as well, and I will always celebrate that. And I know it's now 3 years removed, and 3 years in a row we've had a first round exit, and that stings and it sucks. I'm not gonna like sugarcoat and be like, I feel great. I felt like ill today at work. I did not feel good. I pushed through it, whatever. But it's
But it's like,
I
but it's 3 years, and you have to include there's a pandemic.
right, exactly. Two of those
Come
years were
on.
not normal years, right?
Yeah.
And we were just a couple tiebreaker, a couple points away from winning the division again this year.
Yeah.
And but I don't know if we had to play the Islanders around one like Pittsburgh's doing, I'm not sure we would have fared a whole lot better, to be honest. I'm watching
Agreed.
that series, and I'm not going to say that it was a matchup issue. And I think that we were injured. We're a little old. We got exposed, and they had a game plan, and we didn't make enough adjustments, especially on the power play. And a better team won.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of if there's anything specific that I want to talk about in this game. I mean, Patrice Bergeron was phenomenal, and we had nothing going for the first two periods, and the one goal that happened was Connor Sherry off the rebound, and we just didn't have enough second chances in this game
Yeah.
specifically. And Tuukka Rask was phenomenal, and I think
Yeah.
that we should not take anything away from his great play. Uh, we're gonna bring Gil in now, and then I'm gonna put up some interesting news article that Anna dug up from the archives that will then prompt us to discuss how we should go forward with this expansion draft, which is going to be the next big key for the Capitals. Gil, do you want to come on camera, or Mike? I don't know which you're doing, but feel free to jump on, and we could talk about this.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, you're in.
Okay, yeah, I don't know if the video, not sure the video is going through. Hang on. Should be starting that.
There we go. It's starting, so I think maybe toggle one. Oh wait, no, there you are.
Yep.
You're coming back. There you
are. Yeah.
Mullet and all.
Yeah, still got it. Still rocking it.
Okay.
My hair is also longer, so I get it. So
we had to keep some hair after we shaved for the playoff beards.
I know my playoff beard came back.
It's looking good.
Yeah, but yeah. All right. So Gil, we've kind of broken down the games. If people want to hear your rants about the first part of the series, we kind of gave a little in our opening about where Anna and you, and I think that you guys did a great job on your podcast. SportsOTHP.com, click the podcast partners button, click the Power Play Point podcast, and you can hear their takeaways. As well as they had a special guest, and he did a phenomenal job, calling in. So that it's all good. So that's a very good takeaway of how you felt leading up into the last game. So I won't make you rehash all of that. But what is your next day reaction to the last game? And then we'll talk about future for the Capitals.
Well, I'm like you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I was approaching this game with a lot of dread because I don't want to be too melodramatic, but I mean it's kind of like facing a day of reckoning. There are these great players, these heroes we've cheered on for so many years now, and I mean I couldn't have said it better. They got exposed. And, you can say it was a question of desire. Yeah, you could throw that in there. You can say it was injuries. Yeah, that was a big factor. But in the end, you got to give credit to the Bruins. They were just a much better team.
Yep.
They were able to better execute. They played their game plan to a T, and the Caps just didn't, couldn't, wouldn't, shouldn't, throw in whatever adjective you want in there. It didn't ring true, and they just could not live up to their game plan that they've had the whole season for whatever reason. And it just didn't work out. And ultimately just wasn't our year. It does hurt saying that, but you stack up what happened in the last 3-4 weeks of the season. It just wasn't their year. Just wasn't their time to do it. Too much happening off the ice, too many injuries. And
do you think it's more injuries or age?
It's both.
Yeah.
It's both really, because there's a certain blog we're all familiar with, but I think they're going to have to change their name. I'm half joking when I say that, but the Russian machine was very breakdownable when it came to the last
but
2
he
weeks
still
of the
puts a
season.
point per game even in the playoffs.
Even with
with all of that,
with his health issues, he was still reliable. He was still producing. Which is why I can't believe there's actually people even suggesting that he's not going to want to sign. He's not going to want to come back.
We'll lay this out very quickly right now. Here's
All
the
right.
situation. This thing happened with TJ Oshie, and right before the 2018 expansion, they decided, hey, if you don't sign the guy, that leaves a spot open, right? That we can protect somebody else.
Right.
All he has to do is has a handshake deal with them. He's doing all of the negotiation. He shakes a hand. They agree to $9.5 to $10.5 million per year for the next 4 years. I won't sign it or do anything until after the draft. The next day it actually comes out, we're done. Right? Because if that wasn't already in place, there's no way he would play with the intensity. You heard no word about the contract. It's not like, why aren't the Capitals trying to sign me? Nothing. You didn't hear even a rumor of anything remotely like it. The only people that are bringing it up are fans that are scared.
Exactly.
It's the only people that are bringing it up. And I get that. He's my, like him and Nick, two favorite Capitals all time. I don't want to lose him either. But as long as Nicholas Backstrom's on this team, he's either playing for the Capitals or he's going back to Russia. But he's not playing for another NHL team.
No.
Those are the two things. He's got homes in those two locations. He wants to play the next 4 years in one of those two locations. Period.
I agree.
I don't see why anyone would think differently. I understand that it's frustrating that he hasn't signed already, and then the what ifs, but you have to silence that. And until I hear anything otherwise, I'm going to assume that they're doing the same thing, but they can't say they're doing it because it skirts the rule. They actually almost got in trouble for it with TJ Oshie, and I believe there was an investigation into it because of the timing was so suspect because he was signed the next day, Gil, right? And so the timing doesn't look, great, right? I think it's going to be the same thing. So, like, they're not allowed to do it the night of because of, like, they don't want any stories to be bigger than that. So I'm sure that there's, like, an actual clause. I'm sure that there's actually going to be a moratorium for a couple of days. But then the first day he's eligible to be signed, after that, it's going to happen.
True. Very, very true.
And I just don't know why anyone thinks otherwise.
Well, I just want to close the book on that by making a point. Anna and I discussed it at the beginning of the season or in the off season beforehand, that one of the things that had to be accomplished was before this coming off season was signing him. Because if not, it would turn into a distraction. Well, it hasn't turned into a distraction, at least not until right now. And it doesn't matter.
I don't even think it's a distraction, right? It's just fans speculating.
Exactly.
Right. It's over. The season's over. There's nothing to distract from. And it hasn't become a distraction because of the exact reasons you just laid out, Robbie. Now, all of the local media, Sam Pell from the Post, Tarek El-Bashir, JJ Regan, I'm sure Steve Wino. I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but none of the local media that regularly covers this team has batted an eye about the Ovechkin contract situation. And that tells me they know, hey, this is covered. This is nothing to worry about. This is a non-issue.
And there's DC loyalty. And I feel like
exactly.
100%.
I think he's super loyal, especially because we won a cup with him. If we had not won a cup into this point, he goes into the offseason, big question marks. Right?
True.
I think
but he's also a player that regardless from since 2018 with the cup, he has been consistent. And aside, like we spoke about this on Saturday, that you're looking at a player that the media has hyped the Gretzky, carrot kind of thing. Like he's got to get this, he's got to get this. Ovechkin's going to play for Ovechkin and the Capitals. Like, if he gets that, that's great, and that'll be amazing. But he is so dedicated to this team and given it 100%, even when he's not 100%. So you have a consistent player. It's not like he's going to sign some, sign something, or, after 2018, and then all of a sudden we put him on this pedestal and then he, doesn't do crap for the next couple of years. That is not who he is. So is he older? Yes, but that can only work in our benefit with his leadership in, helping future players that, are on the same roster with him.
Yeah. So somebody was asking, what is BM going to be doing next? And he's going to answer, we're likely to hear from him tomorrow. That's probably true. Randall was saying that. It wasn't our year. Here's the most concerning thing: no playoff series wins since the Cup. I agree that that's a problem, but I want to give Laviolette another year. First of all, it's a COVID-shortened year. All the rules are thrown out the window. It's a weird system, weird thing. And he historically has brought people to the Cup the second year.
Yeah.
And I said this at the beginning, right? So he's never done it the first year, but he has consistently done well the second year.
Right.
So at least let's give him that, right? People are like, oh, he's got to go too. He's no better, blah, blah, blah.
Please.
Fire the power play coach. We're all in agreement that that's shit, but I don't think you got to throw everything out. I saw a lot of good things with Laviolette.
Yeah.
I don't think that it was necessarily the team not playing for him in the playoffs. That's not anything.
I don't think that at all.
I saw, I think that they did get out coached and outplayed, but I don't necessarily I think injuries, age, speed, adjustments, all those things. But I think he could fix those in a second year, especially if he can start to play with the lineup a lot more. Remember how short of a time period we got Laviolette before the start of the season? People forget about this, right?
True.
I want to say it was like a month before the season started, maybe 2, right? Because it's a very short window from the end of that last run and then the start of the next one, right? And we had got him in between. He had to quickly look at these players. We're very tight to the cap right now, so there's not a lot of wiggle room. And so he's kind of had to make do with who he's got. But now he can bring up some young players. He's got an offseason to think about it. He can see what worked and what didn't work. And as much as I love Chara, he's probably going to be gone, right?
Yeah.
Because I just don't see – I think we got to go younger and faster at that position. Tom also said that Toronto beat Montreal 2-1. Josh says, my question is, will he sign a bloated deal or we take a team and salary cap friendly deal? I think the answer to that question is going to be in between. And what do you consider $10 million? Do you consider that a bloated deal, or do you think that that's fair for your franchise player? Right. So, I mean, that's kind of a loaded question in the sense that I think $10 million is fair for him, but some people are like, oh, it's the last 4 years of his thing. That's paying probably too much for what he will produce going forward. But I think that a little bit he lives up to his last contract that everyone thought was ridiculous. And he deserves to get paid about what that was again, if not even a little bit of a bonus, just because of inflation and stuff. So,
agreed.
So I think you got to pay him at least $9.5 million. I don't see any world in which
there's no doubt. There shouldn't be any doubt in anybody's mind that he still commands a superstar salary. This is what we talked about on our most recent episode. He's still going to command a superstar salary because he is still a face of the league, like it or not. And as such, he's still a local sports celebrity. So with that comes the prestige and the salary. And I think this organization's ready to pay it. They just have to be smart about how it gets doled out, considering what's going to be in 3-4 years, if and when he does retire.
Right.
Then we got to talk about
the
Kuzi contract and the TJ Oshie contract. Those are the other big contracts that we've got to juggle and work around with all these other ones. And so that'll lead into an expansion draft topic in just 1 second. But Randall said that Laviolette absolutely has what it takes, and he needs bodies to fit his system. Honestly, I don't think we could do much better than him right now. And I agree. There's not somebody out there that I want over him.
Yep.
And in fact, this was the guy I wanted back before Trotz. I was calling for this guy before he went to the Predators. And William also said it took Trotz more than 1 year. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Rarely does a coach come into a system the first year and they win it all that year.
Oh my
not to
God.
say that it's never happened. It has happened, but it's very, very rare,
Yeah.
right? Usually it's in the second, third year of a coach, maybe, because coaches don't last very long also in this league. I want to give a scoring update. Overtime, it's 11-11. It's 2-2, still Islanders in Pitt, in a very exciting game. The Oilers are playing the Jets in a very exciting game, and Connor McDavid just did a wraparound goal to score over the Jets. I'm sorry to your mom, Anna, but it ties the game at 1-1 now with 12:24 left in the first period.
That's a huge.
Real quick,
That's a huge game.
quick, can I do a quick impression of Connor McDavid before those 3 games?
No.
Yes, go for it.
Hi.
Yes,
and he
yes.
shows up this game. So
Right. Well, it's such a weird game. I was so convinced they were going to win the last game. I turned it off. I was obviously mistaken on that one.
Well, I'll tell you, my mom has those moments of, calling like she's calling to wish my son a happy birthday. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, here's my phone. Like, go ahead and say it real quick, but I have to jump on with Gil for the podcast. And she's like, oh, okay, but let's talk about the Jets. I'm like, let's not. Let's not, not right now. And so then, of course, today she's
like, can we talk about them
now? And I was like, oh, please. But yeah, so we have I could pull for them. It would be nice to see a Canadian team in.
Well, at least the Canadian team will make it in the top 4, right? That was not guaranteed under most scenarios.
Exactly.
And now we have a scenario where Toronto may play Boston in like a finals or a semifinals. Can you imagine if that happens and then they knock? Can you imagine if Boston knocks Toronto out again after they make it to the Final Four finally? It would be like, that's brutal, right? That's far worse than anything that we have had to think. And then Thompson didn't Lavi win in Carolina in his first year. I'm pretty sure it was his second year.
Yeah,
but I have to go back and check that out. Oshie is a must. Kuzi, my faith has been shaken for William. And William's also cheering for the Jets too. So I'm going to use a screen share real fast, and we're going to share this article that is old. I will remind you that it is not the newest of articles. Let me just reset this here. But it is important, and it sort of illustrates how many people you can protect and then who you're kind of left with, right? So back in April, they wanted to protect Ovi, Backstrom, Kuzi, Mantha, Wilson, Eller, and Sprong, right? Ovi hasn't been signed yet, so you get an extra spot. Kuzi, I don't think I want to protect anymore, and I'd replace that with TJ Oshie. And I understand that people are like, that's a big contract, and you could have Seattle take it off your books, and he can move closer to his family and all that sort of stuff. I really like TJ Oshie. That's why he's the one capital I have right here. I think he's the heart and soul of the team. I got what people were saying, but for me, it was between Kuzi and Oshie going into the end here.
Oshie,
and
100%.
Now it's Oshie 100%. And Gil, do you agree with that assessment?
About Oshie?
Yeah, you would protect him over Kuznetsov? Yes. Yes.
I don't know if you can see it, but
yes, I can.
What does that tell you?
Yes. So would you have always protected him, or do you feel like in the last few weeks you feel differently?
I would still protect him as long as he doesn't have any misgivings about not having the opportunity to play near his hometown. It was said that I forget where I heard it. No, it was last night's post game where I heard it, where you always see him wearing the Seahawks ball caps in a lot of pictures that he's taken in. So yeah, I'm sure he's thinking about home, and of course he's got family there, and probably means even more now that his dad unfortunately passed away earlier in the year. He's got to be thinking about it. But I mean, as long as he doesn't have any misgivings about staying here, he wants to be here. Hell yeah, protect him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. So now that we agree that we'll swap those two, I like keeping Sprong. He was good. I like Eller. You can always need more center depth. Tom Wilson, of course. I actually think the Mantha Ray has some upside. Some people were shitting on him for these playoffs. I actually think that he was a better point producer than Verana the last 2 years, and he was just barely put in the system, in a trade deadline. Let's give him a year in our system and see what he can do. I think I would like to see a little more from him.
Can I be the bad guy here?
But I don't think that they're going to take him anyway. So even if we put Mantha up for the taking.
Yeah, he's probably, yeah, I think you're right. But I want to be the bad guy here and say, look, I'm a little sick of the Vrana criers that, want to crap on Mantha for what he's doing. I would take his 1 assist a game and his 7 to 10 shot attempts a game over Vrana kind of standing there and just wondering, okay, why is this guy past me with the puck already?
Well, he plays both ways. He plays along the board. Exactly. He plays a heavy game. Verana's good on the breakaway. I will agree. If I have to have one for a breakaway, I pick Vrana. But in every other scenario, I take Mantha.
In the playoffs, you just don't get that many breakaways. I'm
right.
sorry.
I agree with you.
That's why Vrana really wasn't, he didn't really shine in the playoffs because it's not his element. Not what we needed.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, all right. So maybe, I don't know if we protect him or not, but Ovi's off the books. We're swapping Kuzi in this graphic here for TJ Oshie. Who else from the forwards? I'll give each one of you one extra one that we don't have on this list. Who would you want to protect right now? I'll start with you, Gil.
Well, they just signed Connor Sherry. They just extended, or Sherry. They just extended him. I wouldn't mind seeing him stick around. Geez, you hate to see. I mean, it seems kind of funny. The entire fourth line is left off.
But I mean, they're good, but I think they could be replaced by players in Hershey. We've got such talent in Hershey. I like them. I thought they were the most consistent line. There's nothing, but I also don't think that teams are going to be stealing those players, right? So I think they're going to steal a higher end talent than them. So I think if you could leave them exposed, they're probably not going to take them.
It's possible. It just seems I don't know. It weirds me out a little bit to not see at least one of their names in there.
I agree with, but I think that you got to protect the people that you're scared the most of someone stealing, right? Yeah. And True. So for me, none of those three, as much as I like them, I don't think the Kraken are like salivating over and, they're saying, hey, that'll be the pickup for us, right? So on the defensive side, you got John Carlson, Schultz, Dylan, or Orlov. So I guess that you can only protect 3 in this scenario. I think Orlov has played into that scenario.
Very much so.
And I think Carlson still, I know people hate on Carlson. Some people want him out, whatever. I still think he's good. I think maybe we play him too many minutes, in my opinion. But I think he's still serviceable. And I like Justin Schultz too. Gil, what are your thoughts on who would you protect for your 3 defensive players?
Well, really, really, really hard to say. I totally agree with you in that Orlov has played himself this last year and a half into that category, into worth being protected. You look at his play, that backs it up. The numbers back it up. I don't see how you don't leave him off the protected list. Brendan Dillon, on the other hand, I think he's playing himself off that list, and he kind of got exposed for, when TVR wasn't in, and then he was, he kind of got exposed as to what kind of partner he needs. So I unfortunately, I mean, I love the guy when he first started. He's got a lot of grit, which, this team can never have too much of. But on the other hand, I really wouldn't be surprised, shocked, or all of that upset really if he left. Everyone else, pretty much a toss-up. I might as well get it out now. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to our last episode.
I did.
There is a player, a skater, and I think I just revealed something there that I will talk about next week as the man who needs to be off this team ASAP for a variety of reasons. So I hope everybody listening out there catches our show next week, because I think the sooner this player leaves, the better this team will get immediately for a lot of tangible and intangible reasons. I'm not going to say who it is here.
My gut feeling is you're talking about Kuzi, but I won't make you reveal.
Well-
But like, because I feel that way about Kuzi myself, so I won't project on anything to you because he gave COVID twice to Sammy and pretty much fucked our season potentially twice. And I am done spending that kind of money on him. And I feel bad for my dad who has his jersey. And I tried to convince him that he was going to be the player of the future. And he hasn't really showed up since 2018. And he's not worth the money that we're spending. So that's why he's on my exposed list. And a real fast forwards. You got one more spot. What's your extra forward? And between these four, or what are your three defensemen that you're protecting?
I do agree that it's time for Kuzi to go. I do. It is time. As for the defensemen,
who's your extra forward? Which one other forward that's on this list that you're protecting?
That's so hard.
I'm kind of with Gil on the Sherry pick. I think that's a good pick.
Yeah, you know what? I think
he's proven himself this year.
He has.
That's very smart.
He has. I could go
and it's a smart contract. They may want that contract because it's a really good contract.
And he's also kind of like one that you just don't expect because it's he's I could go that.
Yeah, and then defensive side.
And then of course yesterday was like, yay!
Right, exactly. I mean, he came through in the clutch moment. He was the only one that did. So
yeah. I'm so torn with John Carlson, to be honest. Like, part of me feels like he has the potential, he has the skill, and then we're like blah blah blah, and then it's just not consistent. But I am a Brendan Dillon fan, and then I have to say that Orlov has proven himself. So I think at this point, God, I don't know. I think it may just be time for Carlson to go. Ugh.
Yeah. Greg Christensen thinks that you should also add Dowd to the list to protect up space on the center. My one thought is, and I don't disagree with that thought process, but I think we're going to have a couple of players come up from Hershey, and they've got some decent centers down there as well that I'd like to see up at NHL level. So I'm not saying I love Dowd, but at the same time, if that were to happen, I think that they would have they'd have a spot in the fourth line that they could bring somebody up. And maybe our fourth line's always been a grinding line. And maybe we need to add some more speed to that line to compete with some of these other lines in the NHL. I know that was kind of always our thinking, is we need to grind at fourth line, but we have so many grinders across the lines. I don't know if maybe that's not the answer anymore. And the NHL changes on those sorts of things. We're going to have to wrap it up because I do have my Wizards roundtable on, and we have gone almost 15 minutes over what I had allotted, but that's fine. I love the Caps talk. I have no complaints here. I'm going to stop the screen share so people can see our lovely faces. But I appreciate us just walking through that exercise, and our feelings might change before the expansion draft. I totally appreciate these are kind of our initial thoughts. With,
everything's so raw.
It is still raw, and I appreciate. I think our emotions have been very calm and collected. I think that we all agree they had a good regular season. They got maybe beat by a better team. It's frustrating. It's sad. It doesn't mean to anyone who's questioning our fandom because we're not outraged or screaming. I think that you can see things from an even keel point of view, and hopefully, and we're all Caps fans. It's not like we're taking it from a neutral perspective.
Exactly.
We're all still fans of the team, but we can see. And first of all, 3 years removed from a cup isn't the end of the world,
Not with the pandemic. I mean, like I keep coming back to it, but it's like you cannot take the fact that the pandemic, and then we had 56 games amongst the same team. There was a lot to be said about this season, and I think we should be proud of the Capitals for how they played, and we were just outplayed, and that's just what it comes down to.
Indeed. Well, I really appreciate everybody for joining us. Josh, Randall, Greg, William, everybody was commenting. They've been posting their thoughts. So if people want to go back to the Facebook Live that we did live on the page and read everybody's lines, I think they have some solid ones out there. I'm not going to read through everybody's lines on air, but I really appreciate everyone taking the time for letting me know what their thoughts are. I think that they're very smart, and I'm glad that you guys could be a part of it live, and I will definitely clip it up and we'll release this as its own video. I might wait a day or two. It's not like it's anything breaking for us. I'll probably clip up the Wizards and the Nationals ones before this, just because they're a little bit more timely. I usually do Capitals first. Yeah, they're still in it. It's sad to say. Winnipeg just scored. They went up 2-1, 4:04 left in the first period. It's still tied 2-2 with 1:48 left in the first overtime in the New York Islanders Pitts game. If you want to hear Anna and Gil's thoughts on the other games in the series and their thoughts leading up into this one, if you go to sportsothp.com, click on the podcast partners button, click on the Power Play Point podcast. You can get more of the stylings of Gil and Anna, and also Josh Kirby, if you want to hear his thoughts on it as well. He did a great job. So I really appreciate everyone for tuning in on the Facebook Live. We are going to change gears. Gil, any final thoughts before I let you go?
Nothing except thanks for having me on for probably going to be the last cap segment on SportsOTHP.
We'll definitely do some off-season something. Maybe not during a show.
I think so, there's I anticipate a lot of moves. So yeah, I think we'll have a lot to talk about there. And so I guess my final thought is I want to not to be vulgar, but I want to do one final middle finger to all of the other NHL fans and all the league itself. Right here, baby. Right here.
Yes.
Take this and eat it.
Yes.
Deal with it. Here, Tuesday, rent-free.
Right. I'm trying to point to the right side, so I think it's this way. It's Anna's got Tom Wilson, on her side always, and so I appreciate it, Gil, breaking it down. Everyone should definitely check out the Power Play Point podcast. It's a fun time. I really appreciate your time and friendship, and we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Love it. Take care.
Right.
Bye, Gil.
And I'll let you have the floor for your final take as well. And then I'll have you guys turn off your cameras and we'll bring in our Wizards team.
Yeah, this has just been a great time as usual with you and Carol. And I hope, God, 2 car sales. That's awesome. I'm so happy for him. So yeah, there are some really good news between you and Liz and everything else that we're going to have to focus on from,
Indeed. I was so hoping 2 pregnancies, 2 cups. I'm sorry, Zara, you're not as lucky as your brother, I guess. So
it's all good. It's all
good. I'll thank Zach double for bringing us the 1 cup. So
there you go. But no, this has been great, and we'll definitely be in contact. And I guess at this point, I don't know who I'm rooting for. I'm just looking for some really strong, fun hockey, and so I will continue to watch, and we'll see what happens.
I was going to break down all the other series, but we went way longer than I could have ever imagined. So I might do that at the very end of this podcast if there's time. But if not, I do encourage people to go check out the other series. That Islanders Pittsburgh game just went to double overtime. Winnipeg's now up 2-1 and on the power play with 2:21 left in the first in that game. And the Panthers are up 3-1 over the Lightning. I'm reading now.
The Lightning was up 3-0, or
the Panthers are. It was
in the series
3-1. So this would make it 3-2 and force a game 6 back in Tampa Bay. It's crazy that Tampa Bay was the underdog in that series, quote unquote, even though they're the champions. They're not really the underdogs because the Panthers were never that scary, but the Panthers were the higher seed. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, definitely.
There's also the Wild Golden Knights is going to start at 10:30, and then on Tuesday the Maple Leafs Canadiens series continues. The Predators also play the Hurricanes. That series is tied 2-2, and that'll be an 8:00 one. So some exciting other series. Definitely people should check it out if they haven't. But Anna, thank you as always, and we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Have a great rest of the show. Look at you going solo.
I know. Awesome. I'm going to go solo for a minute, and then we're going to bring in all of our Wizards guys. So I
love
that.
it. All right.
Thank
have
you
a
so
good
much,
night.
Anna.
I'll see you soon.
All righty.
Bye.
So So we'll bring in some of the guys right now, and while they do that, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And that extra long capital segment, I'll have to retime code everything. We're going to bring in Brian Brennan here. We're also going to bring in the champ himself, DC's People's Champ, Ken, from the True No Spots podcast, who's also been modding and talking to people in Twitch chat, which I always appreciate. And then we also are going to bring in Arun. I think the camera also, maybe not, maybe just the voice of Arun. I don't know. Surprise us. There he is. The man, the myth, the statistician himself. Arun is on as well. So I'll introduce each one of you guys and give a quick hello, and then we'll get into this exciting. It's weird. We're going to talk playoff basketball. Wizards have 3 different playoff opponents in this segment, and we'll break down all of those real quick, and then we'll talk about this series, obviously, with Philadelphia. But Champ, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. A couple of astounding things have happened this month. The Caps actually got eliminated in the first round. Phil Mickelson won a major at 50, and the Wizards actually made the playoffs proper. So a really crazy month. But how are you?
I'm good. I'll ask Arun to confirm this wasn't in April. Didn't they get like a 2% or less chance to even make this this tournament, the actual tournament? And it's pretty incredible. And how are you doing?
Chances were even like 0.5% according to 538.com.
Wow. Yeah, I thought it was less than 2. So yeah, 0.5%. So it's remarkable that they were able to do this. The Islanders almost scored there, but they did not. So that was a highlight. Yeah, I forgot that's already double overtime. Yeah, just really some exciting basketball just down the stretch. They, I think, go down as one of the. How do I want to say this? So they were so many games below 500. I want to say it was like 10 or 15 games below 500, and to still make the playoffs. I don't remember what the exact number was, but it was more than 10 games below 500. Yeah. So it was pretty crazy that they made it. But I'm super happy. But Arun, how are you doing?
Not bad. Yeah, I believe they were 17 and 27, but they were actually before that they were 17 and 22. So they went on a losing streak so they could pad they're like one of the first teams to like ever be that far below 500 to ever make the playoffs. So good for the Wizards for not giving up, but they probably shouldn't have been in that big of a hole in the first place either.
Right, that's true. And it's funny because we talked about this last week, and I'll talk about it again. The play-in tournament is phenomenal, and it basically created an opportunity that instead of the Wizards tanking like they probably would have at the end of the season, knowing where they were, with 20 games left or 25 games left, instead they went for it, and they made it. And you have a team like Charlotte that completely fell off, and it was a pretty incredible run and a very exciting play-in tournament. And I'm really excited that they were able to, I don't want to say win the tournament, but win their way in and get themselves into a real playoff game. Brian, I'm going to bring you in next. I've been listening to your podcast as to get me excited for doing this podcast.
Thank you.
I was loving your Knicks talk, but you're also your general NBA playoff talk. If people want to check that out, they should this week click on, if you get Anchor, which is a wonderful app, you can actually search the No Spots podcast. You can find Upon Further Review with Brian Brennan and this podcast, Sports on the Hill podcast, all on the Anchor app. So I know I'm sounding like an ad, and I should actually just sign up for doing their ad revenue, which I've never actually done.
Me neither, honestly. I don't know why.
Which is so funny, which is kind of funny. But here's a shout out for Anchor in the middle, free plug, because we've used them for now 2 seasons, and they've been phenomenal. Except for they did screw up today, and I know that Brian was pissed at them. So, but it's a great episode. So I know it's going to take a little extra work, but go to Anchor. It's on your app store on your phone, and search Upon Further Review with Brian Brennan, and you can listen to it there, episode 50, exclusively on the app. And then the No Spots podcast, you can check out all their latest ones and check out the episode you're listening to right now. But Brian does a great job of breaking down the playoffs and all this stuff. And I'm sorry about the Knicks. I watched that game. I feel like I cursed every team I watched yesterday, and so I'm so sorry.
Don't watch on Wednesday. Please don't watch on Wednesday.
I will stop watching on Wednesday. I think you actually encouraged me to watch it though, and no offense to you.
Well, now that I know that you're bad luck, I
yes.
don't want you watching anymore.
Yes, okay, I will stop watching them. It was honestly the first Knicks game I'd watched in a little while, so I do feel a little bad about that. But
That's fine.
I've been watching highlights, and you've been getting me all amped listening to your podcast about them. So, go Knicks, go! Right, that's their anthem. And,
go New York, go New York, go!
Right,
go New York, go New York, go! There we go.
So, So anyway, what are your thoughts on the play-in? And how are you doing tonight? I guess I haven't even given you your intro yet, but what are your thoughts?
I'm doing great. I'm loving this Islanders game. Don't spoil it for me, please. I'm loving this overtime Islanders game. As far as the play-in goes, I've said, I've been on the record saying this. I love the concept. I hope it sticks. I think all these games were a lot of fun. In fact, they were some of the highest rated NBA games all season. I'm glad the Wizards made it out of it. It looked dicey there for a while. I mean, after that Celtics game, it definitely was a little nerve-wracking. But I think this is exciting, and I know the NBA is looking at also maybe adding a potential tournament in the middle of the season as well. I think more tournament style stuff like this is good. I really like it, and I'm glad.
I like a mid-season tournament. I think that sounds really cool. I don't know.
Well,
I think it can't count to your wins losses because I think it'd become lopsided that way. But I don't know how you would make them interesting and be able to do it. But because the problem is there would be an uneven number of games then potentially.
Well, the way they do it in soccer is there's usually a cup competition in the middle of the season, and that they don't count that towards the regular season. It's its own thing. So that's what the NBA I think would try and do. I think
what is the incentive for the players if it's not towards?
There's money involved, and there's also like European qualification and things like that. I don't know what the incentives would be for I'm sure there would be money involved. I'm sure there'd be a huge prize involved, but it's something I've heard. I've heard because of this play. Yeah, I think it would be a great idea, and it's something I've heard because of this play-in that might come out of it. It might be something that comes out of this play-in. But yeah, I love the play-in, and I'm glad the Wizards made it out.
Yeah, let me bring up the scores real quickly. I'm gonna share my screen again. Perfect. And so let's break down some of these games. So when we last left off, they beat the Hornets, got that 8th seed. We were watching the Celtics game together, and I'll run it back to where we were, right? So at the time, the Celtics came out on fire, 27-21. The Washington Wizards made a bit of a game of it. They outscored them 33-25. And then there was a terrible third quarter there where they were outscored 38-26. And that's where we left off. And we kind of thought that was kind of the way that it was going to go. And that was pretty true. I mean, they outscored us 28-20 in the fourth quarter. Bradley Beal had 9 rebounds and 22 points. Russell Westbrook had 14 rebounds, 5 assists, and 20 points. But just overall, Boston, their physicality, they kind of manhandled them. Jason Tatum put up 50, which is always tough, and Kemba Walker put up 29. And just our field goal percentage was pretty good, and the Boston's was pretty bad. But the reality was our three-pointers were terrible, and they did better at that. And just overall, they just had more second chance points. But our points in the paint were really good. I mean, we played pretty well for the most part. I just think Boston's a better team, but I'll let each one of you guys break it down. I'll start with you, Champ. What were your thoughts on this game?
This game here was a tale of a team going with their strengths in order to gain the advantage and win the contest. For the Celtics, it was from beyond the arc. They were always known as a very, very strong three-point shooting team, and also going on the back of one of their best players in this instance was Jason Tatum. I mean, Jason Tatum went off for 50 points. If you can't stop a team's best player and things of that nature, you're not going to win many games like this. And so with Tatum going off the way that he did, it was absolutely just it was heartbreaking because you kind of felt that they could have taken this team. they could have beat the Celtics, but unfortunately, their best player was able to go off. They were able to do what they needed to do behind the arc. What the Wizards couldn't do anything from beyond the arc. They couldn't do anything defensively. And because of that, that's the result that we had. Is a very heartbreaking loss in this tournament.
Yeah, for sure. I'm modding Turbo, my friend who's a mod in a million channels, and I'm somehow his mod. So I figured turnaround is fair play. So thank you, Champ, for also taking care of those bots. Twitch be twitching sometimes. Hey, that means we're doing something right. That if people found us to try to spam us. So overall, in this game, it was disappointing, but it wasn't surprising. Arun, what are some of your takeaways from it?
Yeah, the Wizards, they didn't really get up for this game defensively. Mainly Rui Hachimura. He picked up a lot of really dumb fouls. Maybe like one or two were questionable calls, but took a couple fouls, and he was the primary guy guarding Jason Tatum, who went off for 50 points. He's 6'8". Bradley Beal is 6'4", and he could not guard him. I was surprised Scott Brooks didn't go to Bonga, who actually guarded him in the last game where the Wizards blew a 5-point lead with 45 seconds to go. But overall, they did a better job containing Tatum. But it just wasn't in the cards for the Wizards. The Celtics had lost 6 of their last 7 games going into the playing game. The Wizards were a hotter team, but when it came down to a do or die situation, the Celtics have been there before. They were in the conference finals last year, and the Westbrook did not play well. We only had 5 assists, 20 points, but he took 18 shots to get those 20 points. And you mentioned the 3-point shooting was off for Pens, 7 from 3. Not going to get it done, and that's what happened.
Yeah, for sure. And it was their worst game in the last 20 games, at least. So, I mean, most of the games they had lost were within 5 points. And they were kind of due for a bad game. And I wasn't surprised that it would be against Boston. I didn't go into this game thinking we were going to, I wanted to get the 7th seed. Although looking at the matchup now, watching that Boston Nets game, I'm not sure we wanted the Nets like we think we wanted the Nets. I know we played them well in the regular season, but when that big three is on, they're tough to beat. So, Brian, I'll throw it back to you. Do you think that the Wizards, now what you've seen in game 1, do you think they would have matched up better or worse against the Nets or, who they're playing now, the 76ers?
I mean, I think either series would have been really tough. I think that no matter who they're going to play, I was going to pick either the Sixers or the Nets to win that series in 6 games. I just think that, those are just better teams. The Wizards are a good team. Like you guys said, this was probably the Celtics game, probably their worst game in a couple of weeks that they played. And the 3-point shooting, like you said, was not there. They absolutely have to do better than that. 3 of 21 is awful. And the Celtics just came to play. I was a little surprised because the Celtics were cold going into the series, but Jason Tatum absolutely carried them. He is a really fast rising star in this league. Even without Jaylen Brown, Tatum was amazing. To score 50 points in the playing game, put the team on his back. That was really impressive. But again, I warned all my friends who are Wizards fans after this game, don't panic because you still have one more chance at this. You got kind of lucky. You got the higher seed. You were able to move to the next game, even if you lost. But yeah, this was a tough game, and but they bounced back strong against Indiana for sure.
Yeah. Let's get into that game, and I will. So it started off pretty even, 30-29 in the first quarter, with the Wizards outscoring them just barely. But in the second, they kind of took over, outscored them 36-23. And then in the third quarter, just like busted this thing wide open. Scored 48 points in the third. I mean, I know Indiana scored 31, but at that point, it was too much. Indiana outscored them in the fourth, 32-28, but not by very much. And by that point, it's 142 points put up on the board to 115 by the Pacers. The Wizards that were key contributors, Westbrook, who didn't have enough rebounds, but still had 15 assists and 18 points. Rui had 18 points. Neto had 14. Bradley had 25. Gafford, I thought, played phenomenal, 13 rebounds and 15 points for him. Anthony Gill had 10 points as well. Bertans had 9. Lopez had 9. So it was like scoring across the board, which was really good to see. Arun, what are some of your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, the Wizards really blew it open in the second quarter. The Pacers had no answer for Russell Westbrook, and this time Westbrook he didn't want to have 2 bad games in a row, especially a lot of the eyes were on him, considering how poorly he performed against Boston. And the 15 assists were really good. Only 3 turnovers, which was really solid. Robin Lopez, he also played really well along with Gafford. Lopez got MVP chance in the middle of the game, which I thought was pretty funny at the free throw line. Bertans even hit a couple of threes in the second half. He was cold to start the game, which was concerning, but he got it going. Overall, the Wizards had 6 guys in double figures, and they just took care of the Pacers, who lost to the Wizards 4 times, and only one of those games was close, and that's when Beal left with an injury, and he had 50 points in that game. So just one of those teams that the Wizards match up well with. Miles Turner being out, Karis LeVert missing this game as well. So the Wizards take care of business and finally secure a playoff spot.
Yeah, it's really amazing. We got so lucky that it was this team that we're playing against, who we'd kind of had practice leading up to it. We'd played them a couple of times recently and beat them. Just the whole scenario worked out really into our favor. Other teams, thank you, Knicks. Thank you, Lakers, for showing up that last week and beating some teams and letting this fall out the way that it was, because we needed help going into that last week. And I think we could have beaten the Pacers in Indiana as well, but I think it was a huge advantage to play them at home. And especially, I think having a big win on the road at home and then going on the road is very different than losing on the road and then coming home. And I think there's a big advantage. And the Wizards knew they had played their worst game of the season, and the Pacers played one of their best games of the season. And so they're going to come back to the average in some ways. Champ, what were some of your thoughts on this game?
Right. This game worried me because you're coming off a very tough, difficult, heartbreaking loss to someone who's a rival like Boston. And you're coming home, you're facing Indiana, who literally came off of just beating the tar out of Charlotte to knock them out of the playoffs entirely. And you're thinking, okay, they got all the momentum, they got everything going for them, and next thing you know, this team shows up. They finally show up. That second and third quarter, they made a statement that said that this is the reason why we went 17-6 down the stretch to get to this position. Westbrook played well. Everybody played well. Rolo has that hook shot working so well. Gafford is just absolutely playing well as a good role player. And Neto showing some moxie as another guard in there. It's just amazing to see what this team can do when adversity is faced with them. They were facing elimination after going on such a run. And so they decided it was time to show up. It was time to play ball. And they went out and they played ball. By the time Indiana tried to make it a game, it wasn't even a game. And great win for this team to get into the AC and get us to the first game of the first round.
Yeah. Brian, what were some of your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, great bounce back after the Boston game. I know some Wizards fans were definitely a little nervous going into this game because it is tough to beat an opponent 4 times in the season. But I mean, a great team effort. You look at some of the stats the guys put up. I mean, Westbrook didn't have a triple double, but he had a big game. Bertans had a nice bounce back as well. You mentioned Gill had a nice game. It was really just a really strong all around performance from the Wizards, and Gafford as well with the double-double. And yeah, I thought it was funny. Champ mentioned it. I thought it was funny that the Pacers blew out the Hornets the first game of the play-in, and then the Wizards turn around and blow out the Pacers to end their season. So, yeah, I think also being at home was an advantage, even with the crowd not being huge. I would have liked to have seen DC. I know we've talked about this, Robbie. I would have liked to have seen DC open it up a bit more for the playoffs for both the Caps and the Wizards. But I think just either being at home, I think was a huge advantage for this team just to get that extra home game in the play-in. And a great effort in this one. They should be absolutely proud of what they've accomplished this season. To get into the actual play-in is a huge deal from where they started. And on to the Philly series.
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to spoil too much for you, Brian.
Oh, I already saw it.
You already saw it. Okay.
Yeah.
So Flyers, Flyers.
Islanders.
Florida, I was going to do that game first. Florida just scored an empty net goal with 14.6 seconds left. They're going to win that game 4-1, it looks like. And that's going to be big because it'll send it back to Tampa Bay. But Tampa Bay just needs to win game 6. And they don't want to go back to Florida for a game 7 because these two teams have played each other very tough. In the Islanders game versus the Penguins, though, I've got some good news because misery loves company, and I love it when the Penguins lose in double overtime. That makes me very happy. Hey, Lucky. Lucky will like this. The Penguins just lost in double overtime to the Islanders. Game-winning goal by Bailey. That's exciting. That will go. So that series is now 3-2 Islanders going back to the island for a game 6. So go Barry Trotz and the Islanders. I hope that they win. I would love to see an Islanders Boston.
The crowd is going to be amazing at the Coliseum on Wednesday. If it's anything like the Knicks game was the other night, the crowd is going to be amazing at Nassau Coliseum for that game.
Yeah, especially because they're not going to be able to play many more games at Nassau Coliseum. So
exactly,
they're going to want to rock that place out. I'm curious, what is New York City's capacity right now?
So it's 50. So they've worked it out. With the Knicks have at least worked it out. The Knicks had 15,000 at the Garden last night.
And how many can the Garden hold?
About 20,000 or so.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
so it's like 75%.
Basically, yeah. And the Islanders, I think, are about the same. I would say. I don't know how much Nassau Coliseum holds off the top of my head, but there were a lot of people at games 3 and 4, and I'd imagine the crowd is going to be incredible when it comes on. I mean, I think the crowd's going to be really good for that. I mean, potential series clinching game. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, here we go. Wikipedia. So it looks like for ice hockey, 13,000. So
it's going to be packed.
Yeah. So times 0.75 looks like about 10,000 people.
Yeah.
So interesting. Cool.
Back to the Wizards.
Back to the Wizards, right. Sorry for the scoring update. Winnipeg is up 2-1 over Edmonton in the second period. Winnipeg is on the power play once again. All right, so given some scoring updates in hockey, we'll go back to some basketball now. Does anyone have any final thoughts on this game before we move on to this the Philly series? I will take that as a no. All right, so we're going to go on to this 76ers game, which I thought was actually closer than I thought it was going to be, especially early. Wizards actually outscored the 76ers 28-27 in the first quarter. It was even scoring in the second, 34 all. And then the 76ers took a 38-31 lead in the third and were able to hold on to that margin for the rest of the game thereabouts. So they outscored them by 1 in the fourth, 26-25, and won 125-118. But the game was very close. I mean, that seems close just by numbers, but it was even closer than maybe the score shows. I think there was a bad stretch in the third quarter, but other than that, they played a great game. And the Wizards, Bradley Beal put up 33, had 10 rebounds, 6 assists. Westbrook had 14 assists and 16 points. Bertans had 14. Gafford had 12. Alex Len had 12. Rui had 12. So some decent scoring around. It's going to come down to defense. The problem was they couldn't stop Harris. He had 37. They couldn't stop Joel Embiid, who had 30. And Embiid is my big thing. I don't know how they're going to stop him. And then they were able to stop Simmons and Curry for the most part. It's interesting. George Hill had so. All right. What are some of your thoughts on this game?
I also thought this game was a lot closer than I expected, probably just due to Embiid being in foul trouble. But the Wizards centers, they committed a lot of dumb fouls in the first half, a lot of them with Embiid off the floor. I believe they had eight fouls in the first half. And Tobias Harris really got going. He had 14 of his second quarter points with Embiid off the floor. And the Wizards had an opportunity to take the lead in that time frame. I believe Embiid left with 10 minutes to go in the first quarter. The Wizards still had the lead at the end of the first half, but at that point, the game was, I think, all but decided. Like the Sixers, like held on to the edge, and when Embiid was on the floor, they outscored the Wizards by 20 points, and that's probably the way the series is going to go unless Russell Westbrook steps up. He had a pretty poor game. 6 turnovers. He had 15 assists though, which was good, but also another poor shooting night. Bradley Beal got it going 13 for 20 from the field, 31 points, but and Bertans played well. A lot of good offensive contributions, but the 76ers were cold from 3, and that may not keep up. And Embiid, when he's on the floor, he does well, and he was in foul trouble, and he'll probably play more minutes than this one. So it was a good opportunity for the Wizards to step up. Maybe Westbrook can play better, and the Wizards can steal a game or two, but overall, it's not looking good for the Wizards in the series.
Yeah, I agree. I think if they could steal 1 or 2, that would be a huge win for the Wizards and the confidence going forward. But regardless, I tell people we're going to get at least 6 more games than we thought we were going to, and potentially 7, because I do think we might squeak 1 in here, one of the 2 home games. And Swimmy actually has some interesting thoughts. He's from, I believe, the New Jersey area. I know he's a Devils fan. I know that will make Brian upset. But he did say some interesting things. A strange thing for the Mets and Yankees, they're only at 33% capacity, and yet the indoor arenas have larger percent capacity.
That is bullshit. I'm not a fan of that at all.
Yeah.
Don't need to get me started on that. But it's dumb.
So, but what is their rationale? Do you know, Brian?
I don't know. Do you want me to get into Governor Cuomo's mind? I have no idea. I have no idea what that guy's thinking. But it makes no sense to me. Like at this point, we've got stadiums across the country, even in DC at Nationals Park, they're opening up to 100%. You can't tell me you can't have 100% at Yankee Stadium. Come on.
Right. And then Swimmy said it was a big topic on talk radio here today. Although I will say that the indoor games are requiring vaccinations to sit with everyone else shoulder to shoulder. I think they're making exemptions for the playoffs. So then it's not a rule. So that seems even stranger.
Dolan found a way around the rules. The Knicks owner, James Dolan. Yeah, I think he found a way around the rules. So I don't know. It's weird, but
yeah, that is pretty crazy. So, Edmonton was able to tie this game up. It's now 2-2, 15:46 in the second period. So that's exciting for fans of Edmonton because they're down 3-0 in this series. But anyway, all right, let's take a look going forward on the schedule ahead. So we've got a game on Wednesday. So that saves you, Brian. I'm not going to watch your Knicks because they're going to be playing at the same time, I think, right? Does the Knicks play also at 7?
Yeah, Knicks play at 7, but I think Champ has something to say about game 1. If you want to
go yeah, Champ. Sorry. What are some of your thoughts on game 1?
Hey, man, I'm honest, Champ. He forget about me.
So what's funny is on my screen on my Mac, because your audio is set on the other one, it didn't even show up as one of my boxes. So I apologize, Champ. What are some of your thoughts on this game?
Grant Hill said this a lot during the broadcast on TNT, that the 76ers are an extremely physical team, and he wasn't lying. It seemed like almost every other time up and down the court, the Sixers were clanging and banging into Wizards players and all the way around. You could see people, taking charges and blocking fouls. And I mean, this team is incredibly physical. And that might pose a problem for this Wizards team, which is wild because one of their bread and butter, one of the things that made them so good down the stretch that got them to this point was points in the paint. Being physical with guys like Alex Len or Gafford or Rolo. And now they're going up against an extremely physical team such as the Sixers with Joel Embiid in that front court. this is going to be a problem. I think I agree that if they could get at least one or two, I think that'll be a big victory given where they were just over a month ago. But I don't see this series being going the Wizards' way as physical as the 76ers are, not only in the paint but just overall.
One thing that's interesting, I'm looking at these stats here though. Points in the paint, the Wizards actually outscored them 76 to 58, but the fouls, they 24 fouls, and the 76ers only committed 18, and then turnovers. The Wizards had 4 more turnovers, and the 76ers had 10 steals to 4. So if you're looking at the stats here, the Wizards were really good in the paint, but they were giving the 76ers second chances. They were giving the ball up. And I think if they could clean up some of that, again, defensively, they're actually doing better with points in the paint. It's just the fact that we're giving them that many more opportunities. What are some of your thoughts on that, Champ?
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly. I think that was another thing. I'm glad you brought that up. The turnovers were killing me. They were absolutely like ripping me apart. That especially with Westbrook. I mean, they were just giving the ball up so much, and all I could sit there and do and say is like WTF almost every time because I'm like, what are you guys doing? They're already out physicaling you guys, and now y'all just giving the ball up on. And a lot of those turnovers were dumb. They were a
Yeah,
lot of.
that one where he stepped out of bounds and he was like, "Well, no, my heel wasn't down," but it wasn't.
God.
It wasn't enough to prove anything because it's like, of course, you need enough evidence to overturn it,
Yeah,
right?
they're
It's
not
one
going to
of,
overturn that.
yeah,
They're not going to overturn that one.
yeah. I think that he probably wasn't out of bounds, but it wasn't obvious enough that they're going to overturn it, right? But so it doesn't matter. But why put yourself in that position? There was no one around him. Like I don't understand. Yeah, some of those things I agree are very frustrating. All right, now let's look at the schedule. Sorry about that, Champ. And then, but Wednesday, 7 o'clock. And then there's a game 3 on Saturday at 7 o'clock. And then game 4 is Monday on Memorial Day at 7 o'clock, which is why we're not going to do a podcast next week. Because first of all, if we get swept, that's going to be rough. And I wanted some time to process it. If we don't, we'll still have time to talk about it the following week. I know that all the games will be done by that next week. So we'll have a full sense. So we'll recap the entire series in that show, no matter how many games it goes. But I just want your guys' thoughts previewing it. And how many wins do you think the Wizards can squeak out here? And none of us are going to take the Wizards in the series, I'm sure. But how many games do you think the Wizards could win? I'm going to start with you, Champ. What are your thoughts going forward?
I think they will take. I think they'll take one of the 2 games at home because they'll have a pretty sizable capacity in Capital One Arena that'll be on their side of. They'll be pretty hyped for playoff basketball. So I think they take 1 or 2 at home. Uh, I don't think they'll take game 2 this coming Wednesday night, and I don't think they'll take uh, like I said, I think the 76ers will take 1 or 2 from them in DC. But I do think that the Wizards will get at least one of those wins will be at home. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's game 3 because it'll be freshly out of Philly. Everybody will be hyped, especially if they somehow steal game 2. That will really be a big thing. But I honestly see them only winning 1 out of 3 coming up. And that's the one game in DC, I think game 3.
Sounds so. So how many was the final number? I'm sorry, I was saying hello to a friend.
No worries. I think they take game 3, but they lose game 2 and game 4. So that's my prediction.
Got it. Okay. And then, so do you think they lose in game 5 though too? Because we're not going to be on next week, so you can give your thoughts of the whole thing. Do you think that they then lose the game 5?
I honestly think that you know what? I'm just gonna say yes. I think they go out 5 games. I
Yeah,
think they'll
a gentleman's sweep a la the Capitals.
right. I think they win game 3, but that'll be the only one they win. They'll lose. They'll Six will take 1 on at home, and they'll sweep. They'll go 3-0 on the road. I mean, in their home city, Philly will, and it'll be a 4-1 victory for the 76ers.
Yeah, I kind of see it that same way. Arun, what is your takeaway from the series? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I just talked to the dog, and he told me that Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal committed more turnovers than the entire 76ers team. So thanks, dog.
The Doge stats. But overall, do you think we win 1, 2, 0 games? What are your thoughts?
I'm flipping between 2 and 0. So
yeah.
The dog says to go with 2, but I'm gonna go. I guess I'll listen to the dog go. Wizards losing 6.
Losers losing 6. Brian, what is your take?
Yeah, I'm gonna at the start of the series. I said the Sixers would win in 6. I'm going to stick with that. I say the Wizards win games 3. I think they'll win game 3 at home. I think they'll win game 5. And then that series will be done in 6 games.
So I think the Wizards will lose at home in game 6?
Yes, I think the series will end in DC at 6 games.
I'm surprised you think we'll win a road game versus it being split.
I just don't think it's going to end in 5 games. I didn't want to say it was going to end in 5 games. Honestly, I think the Wizards are a better team than to lose in 5 games. They've had a great season. I think they'll at least win 2 games against the Sixers team. They played them. I didn't get a chance to give my thoughts on game 1, but I thought they played really tough. They just have to cut down on the mistakes, honestly, like those turnovers. And but it's going to be a grind. I mean, Embiid and Simmons and Tobias Harris are all really good players. And you said they kind of held Simmons in check, but he still had a double-double with rebounds and assists. So, I mean, he's a good player. And Embiid's a monster. He's a top 3 finalist for MVP. This is not going to be easy, but I think the Wizards can at least win 2 games. I still got the Sixers winning in 6.
Yeah, I hope that you're right. I think 1 would be 2 would be great. 2 would be even better. I think you know I just don't know if they could win a road game. And I mean, Philadelphia was rocking. I kind of see it as us winning the first 2 home games, go 2-2, and then we lose 2 in a row. So it kind of goes 2-2-2, is how I see it, and we lose in 6.
It could be that. It could be that. I'm just saying.
That 6. That makes sense. My gut is still saying that they only win 1 of the 2 home games, and they lose in 5, the gentleman's sweep in Philadelphia. That's kind of where my gut is leaning. I'm hoping it's a 2-2-2-1, but I don't know. It's going to be tough either way. So. I'm gonna quickly, pivot. We're gonna talk about the Nats schedule with all you guys on, and then we're gonna end after that because we only have about 5 minutes left of the podcast. I'm gonna just quickly go through it, and then I'll let you guys say your goodbyes at the end of that. I know that we don't usually keep you guys on. Usually it's Carol doing the national stuff, but I'm gonna pull up the Nats schedule right now, and. So here we are. So it was a bad week to start off for the Nationals against Chicago. So when we last left off, they lost Monday. We recapped that because we did a show on Tuesday. They were losing Tuesday. So you can give our thoughts on that one live on the last week's podcast. We did it again on a Tuesday. Go to SportsOTHP.com. They were able to win the next game at Chicago 4-3, and then lose the last one 5-2. And we're able to basically take 1 out of the 4. And it wasn't a great series at Chicago, but I was happy that they went and played Baltimore in the Battle of the Beltway, and they were able to win all 3 games. So they won Friday 4-2, Saturday they won 12-9, which are 2 of my favorite numbers, and 23 on the 23rd they won 6-5. So they were able to take that, and they've got a day off today, and then a 3-game series against Cincinnati. So it's at 7:05 for all 3 of those games on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, all home games. And then Milwaukee, also in Washington, will play on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So the Friday game is at 7:05. The Saturday game is at 7:15, and the Sunday is a matinee game at 1:05. Brian, do you know anything about Cincinnati or Milwaukee this year? And what are your thoughts on the upcoming week for the Nationals?
Yeah, so Cincinnati and Milwaukee are both in the NL Central, which is kind of similar to the NL East. There's real. The Cardinals are probably the best team, but nobody's really run away with it so far. I'm looking forward to that Thursday game because it's going to be an interesting pitching matchup. It's going to be Sonny Gray for the Reds, who used to be on the Yankees. He was not very good when he was on the Yankees, but ever since he got traded to Cincinnati, he's really put his career back on track, and he's a nice story. He's going up against Steven Strasburg. I think that's going to be a good game. Yeah, you see the standings right there. St. Louis they're a really talented squad. But the Red, it's all close. And any team can, a lot of those guys, I think 4 teams from the NL Central made the playoffs last year. I know it was expanded playoff, but just win these games. This is a long homestand. It's a 9-game homestand. You swept the Orioles over the weekend. That game on Saturday, I didn't see it, but sounds a lot of fun. There were 2 grand slams, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, I don't really have much to add on it. I think they're better than the Reds and the Brewers, so take care of business against them. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. Arun, do you have anything to add?
No, just the Nats. It's nice that they swept the Orioles, and earlier in the season they swept the Marlins, so they're taking care of business against the bad teams. And hopefully as Brian said, hopefully they do well against the Reds and the Brewers.
Yes. Champ, I know you haven't been watching as closely baseball, but you have any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I think that this Nationals team seems to mirror the same sort of blueprint that the Wizards do, that they play down to their competition and then they play up, like play down to their competition in terms of bad teams, and they play up to the good teams. I'm kind of hoping that that's what we get here when it comes to these upcoming 2 series, that they play up to this competition and show them that there's still a team that can be trifled with in the National League, and start to really build some momentum as you get into June, July, and everything like that. So that's what I'm hoping that will happen. You have Scherzer pitching in one of these series, you should definitely chalk that up as a win, in my opinion.
I think he's pitching tomorrow, actually.
Let's
Oh,
go.
nice.
Yeah.
So that's good. The Oilers, Jets still tied 2-2. Florida is up 3-1. Oh, that game was already over, right? Yeah. And then some close matchups here in the NHL. I was going to do a scoring update in the NBA real quickly. Milwaukee crushed Miami 132-98, and right now Denver looks like they're up over Portland 45-29. So that's a pretty big lead in that series. But Brian, you said that was a good series, right? The Trailblazers and Nuggets.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good series, at least. I know Portland won the first game. Anytime you can watch Damian Lillard play, it's a lot of fun. And I think that's going to be a 7-game series. Jokic for Denver is, I think, the front runner for MVP. One of the best players in the league for sure. I think that series is going to be great. I love Carmelo Anthony as well. I love all the series here. I'm totally locked into the NBA playoffs. I'm loving it.
Yeah, if people want to check out more, again, download the Anchor app.
No. We fixed it. According to Ken, it is fixed on Spotify at least. So go check it out on Spotify.
The thing is, if you're already subscribed on Spotify, sometimes it screws it up. So
true. That's true.
The only for sure way to do it is Anchor, but hopefully it's on everything else. But anyway, make sure
it should be normal now.
Yeah, it should be normal now. Hopefully. All right, so that's good. I'll let each one of you guys give an NBA series to look out for before we sort of wrap up this whole thing here. Champ, any of the other NBA series or hockey series that you've been watching outside of the local ones, or anything that you particularly are interested in?
Completely honest with you, no. Only one that's really interests me is the Wizards Sixers series, to be honest. Because again, with my podcast, I watch 15 hours of wrestling a week, so I can barely fit in the Wizards, let alone any other team that's not from Washington D.C. But I'm hoping that you guys may be on to something of them going 6 games, or maybe even be super optimistic and they actually win in 7. But yeah, I'm definitely paying attention to that one, though I'm kind of slightly paying attention to this Lakers series because of some of the animosity that's going on there, and with LeBron trying to win an Academy Award for a great acting job. But
yeah, that's an interesting series for sure. I saw some people picking the Lakers over the Suns, and then I saw that might not be true, but it'll be interesting to see. Arun, do you have any? What was the final prediction going into that series? I know there was talk that a 7 series could be favored over a 2 series. Did that end up happening, or did that sort of regress to the mean?
I think probably before Vegas probably had the Lakers winning the series, but that doesn't mean that's probably just means they're trying to get a lot of Laker fans to bet on the series. But right now it's like anybody's series, especially with LeBron not looking at 100%. But who knows what if like as Ken alluded to, maybe he's acting like a little bit. There's like one angle where he like it looks like it's on purpose where he's acting and like going down in front of the cameras to like position himself to get a call. And that fight altercation was pretty funny where Harold knocked over the guy and he only got a technical foul. And LeBron breaking the COVID policy, that was another thing that was pretty funny that
Yeah, it seems players aren't treated evenly with that policy, which is kind of odd. But anyway, I can't be surprised.
Yeah,
LeBron
it's
James
fine. I mean, I'd rather they just play. I don't want to see LeBron get suspended because then the Lakers would definitely lose the series and it would not be that entertaining. So, good call by the NBA. Probably everyone was vaccinated. I think LeBron has been vaccinated.
They were. It was a requirement to go to that event is you had to be vaccinated or
okay.
show a negative test or something. So
Yeah.
they were very careful about that side of it. But Arun, what other series are you interested in?
I'll talk about the Mavs Clippers series because the Clippers were trying to do everything they could to avoid playing the Lakers, and now the Mavs are up 1-0 on them, and they won pretty comfortably over the Clippers. And Porzingis played pretty awfully. The Knicks are probably laughing at the Mavs in that case, just based on that. But the Mavs might beat the Clippers, and that'll be a typical Clippers like way to lose a series that they were trying to game the matchup, and it'll set up questions whether they move on from either Kawhi Leonard or Paul George. But it's still a 50-50 series at this point, even with the Mavs up 1-0, and I'm curious to see how that series will unfold, and not to mention the one that Brian's going to talk about right now.
Right. I have a prediction of which series Brian will talk about. It's a very bold prediction. But Brian, I'll let you talk about your New York Knickerbockers now.
Yeah. So last night was the Knicks' first playoff game in 8 years, and it was awesome. We've already talked about the crowd a little bit and how great the crowd was. It was a great game, back and forth. Game one, the Knicks started off really cold, but they kind of turned it on in the second quarter at least. They had an awful performance from their starters. Julius Randle, the Knicks' best player, had one of his worst games of the season, and they still almost won the game. They would have won the game. They had a 3-point lead with about 50 seconds left. RJ Barrett got his hand on a pass, but it landed in Bogdan Bogdanovic's hands, and he drained a 3 to tie the game. Hawks would go on to win. Trae Young hit a shot with 0.9 seconds to go. Really crushing loss, but I look, the Knicks are going to be fine. I really believe this team is going to bounce back. They have shown me toughness, heart, grit all season. I love this team. I believe they're going to win game 2. They just got to control Trae Young. Trae Young is a beast. The crowd was last night. The crowd was chanting, "Fuck Trae Young, fuck Trae Young," and I loved it at first, but as he started to get better and better and better, I was like, maybe we shouldn't be chanting that. He seems to be feeding off of it. So if they can control Trae Young in game 2, I really believe the Knicks will go to Atlanta 1-1. Bring the same energy, bring the same atmosphere. It was a great start to this series. This is going to be a long, grueling battle, and I'm looking forward to the rest of it. Let's go Knicks. That's all I have to say. Thanks for letting me speak on it, Robbie.
Of course. I wouldn't have skipped an opportunity to let you talk about the Knicks.
Yes.
So anyway, definitely everyone should download Anchor and listen to the latest No Spots podcast, as well as the latest Upon Further Review with Brian Brennan. And if they want to listen to this show again, I encourage them to do that as well. Champ, let people know what's going to be on this week's No Spots podcast.
Right. So this week, this Wednesday, we got Wrestle Chat Wednesday. The main topic we're going to talk about is the lack of character development in wrestling. Like that's kind of gone somewhat by the wayside. So we're going to have a conversation about that among other topics as well. And then on Saturday, for the podcast, we are going to be previewing Double or Nothing, AEW's upcoming pay per view. And just a programming note, we will most likely not be doing a live stream reactions because I am moving the very next day, and so I have to have everything packed up so that way when folks come in on that Monday to move everything out, everything will be packed up. So won't be live streaming that Sunday night for the pay per view, but I will still be watching, and then we will most likely talk about it next week.
Sounds good. All right, Brian, let people know it was on episode 50, as well as what your plans are for episode either 50 part 2 or 51. I don't know what we're going to call Friday, but I'll let people know about that as well.
Yeah, so I had a bunch of problems posting the episode today, but it appears to be normal now. It appears to be up on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and everywhere else where you get your podcasts. So go check it out if you get the chance. On today's episode of Upon Further Review with Brian Brennan, I recap the Knicks game. I go even more in depth on the Knicks game last night against the Hawks. I also talk about the other NBA playoff series. I recap the Yankees. They swept the White Sox. The Yankees are on fire. I want to get that in here while I'm on here. The Yankees are playing some great baseball right now. They've won 6 games in a row. They swept the White Sox. They had a triple play on Friday night. They threw a no-hitter last week, Corey Kluber. The Yankees are playing some great ball. I talk about all that on the podcast as well. I talk about Phil Mickelson winning the PGA. It's a great episode. Go check it out. Episode 51 will be coming out on Friday as well. Thank you to everybody who's supported my podcast through the first 50 episodes of the Revived edition. You guys rock. And Robbie, thanks for having me on, man. I had a great time.
Yes, I have enjoyed your podcast. I enjoyed the first iteration, and that's where we started having you on. Like,
yes.
I want to say 5 seasons ago on this podcast.
2017. Yep.
Yeah, so or I guess it's 4 seasons ago now on this podcast. And but congratulations on 50. 50 is a big accomplishment. I did hear on your podcast say many shows don't make 50. That is
True.
very true. Both of you guys have had podcasts that have stood the test of time, been multiple seasons, so congratulations on that. And I did check on Spotify, it does work. But I have it auto set on my podcast app to download and it doesn't overwrite. So I do encourage people to either go to Spotify and get the updated one or download the Anchor app and listen to the latest stuff there. But both of you guys have phenomenal podcasts. Before I let you go, I'm going to let Arun give his final take, and then we're going to raid somebody. I'm still trying to figure that out.
All right. Yeah. Just shout out to Jordan Clarkson for winning 6th Man of the Year. Former Wizards draft pick who Ernie Grunfeld traded for cash considerations on draft night. So I hope those cash considerations are doing well with Washington. But not much to report. RG3 apparently Cowboys are trying to sign him, or RG3 is trying to make up that the Cowboys are trying to sign him. So let's see how that goes. And the Ravens are planning to give away RG3's number. We'll see who wears the great 3 for the Ravens going forward. And thanks for having me on.
Sounds good. So I think we're going to raid somebody I haven't rated before, the Natalie page. Hold on, let me just make sure that works. So they're doing music. So I always am a big fan of the music stream. So we'll raid her. Thank you, Turbo, for the suggestion. I was going to say turbo and swimming. It came out Turby. But I appreciate that. And so we're going to raid in just a second. But I want to thank everybody for listening to the audio form of the podcast. And anyone listening over on Facebook Live, I'm going to end that right now. But thank you guys for tuning in. And we'll see you guys not next week, but the following week. So we're going to take Memorial Day off and we'll recap this entire Wizards series. We'll also talk about the 2 weeks for the Nationals and maybe any off-season news for either the Caps or the Washington football team. But I'm going to stop the live stream over on Facebook, and we'll continue live on Twitch for just a moment. And we'll go live on perfect. So we're going to stop the recording and we're going to raid. Let me just do this real quick. And that Natalie Page, I think that is spelled correctly. Let's see. Nice. All right. So we're going to be rating in just a second. Thank you guys for tuning in and being a part of the show with me. Great roundtable as always. Everyone, thank you for tuning in live on our Twitch feed. We always have fun over there. Thank you for everyone who has subscribed and been a part of that. So we're going to raid now. I hope you guys have a good night and I hope you enjoy some great music. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.
See you later.